Final Fantasy fanboys and girls rejoice because we finally figure it out right now on Filter.
Filter, a hand-picked top 10 video game countdown, is voted on by you, the viewer, at G4TV.com. I'm ditching my normal Diane Mizota host personality so you guys can see me as I truly am. High summoner and J-pop singing sensation, Yona. Pretty cute, huh? Once long ago in a different age, a noble video game company known as Square Enix, struggling against the forces of digital mediocrity, placed all their hopes and dreams into an ancient 8-bit cartridge. Crafting what they foresaw would be their swan song, the wizards at Square dubbed that game Final Fantasy. Nearly 12 titles later, the magic has endured again and again, invoking one of the most revered and successful role-playing franchises since the beginning of time. But what is really behind the rise of Final Fantasy? We gazed long and hard into our crystal ball to find out.
Famicom has come out in Japan, and some of the first games for Famicom were from Square, but Sakaguchi was bored to death with the whole thing, and he wanted out.
He'd been impressed with Dragon Warrior, and he was trying to make a role-playing game similar to that for Square Enix.
Rumor has it that they called it Final Fantasy because if this game didn't work, that was going to be their final game.
It was a mega hit. It was a mega hit, and it did well in the United States, too.
Released in Japan in 1987, in 1990, Final Fantasy for the NES.
Quite frankly, it set the bar. It put more features, it put more graphics, and the music is just second to none.
Cared about each character. You really did get a sense of adventuring through this grand world.
It's a nice combination of good stories, good game mechanics, amazing graphics. If you look at the Final Fantasy games, Sakaguchi is always dancing at the edge of what a system can possibly do, and visuals have become a very driving force in video games. And I think to a large extent you really have to credit Sakaguchi with that.
It's a quality series, you know, it's sleek, they spend a lot of money on it, and it's super polished.
Final Fantasy VII is the best example. They saw these amazing graphics and these great cinematics, and people who didn't even like RPGs and didn't want to read text when they were playing games went out and bought it. That expanded the genre. A lot of people got it and found out that, hey, I really like an RPG game.
If I didn't know better, I'd think Square had cast some diabolical love spell on the fans and critics. Now, let's begin our best of Final Fantasy adventure with my favorite part, the hero. Do you think Shadow cast a cloud over Vincent? Or is Auron more of a badass than Vivi? Prepare for battle. Only one shall remain standing.
I think Squall really comes across as a kind of a dark hero, kind of an anti-hero in a sense. He wasn't really set on saving the world or really helping anyone. He just found himself kind of in a position to start to find out more about himself and start to care.
Vivi was in Final Fantasy IX, and he was actually a cute character that a lot of people got into because, you never see his face. You just see little two eyes sticking out of a big black hole.
He looks like the guy from He-Man. Orko. Vivi reminds me of Orko from the He-Man cartoon series.
He was a very cute character, and he was a good mascot for Final Fantasy IX.
Vincent was just kind of badass because he has like a gun and like he turns into monsters and stuff. That was kind of amusing. He was definitely one of my favorites just because he was kind of cool and he had an interesting background story to it.
Was a really cool character because you can see that he never raises his voice. He always has his eyes behind these weird glasses. He always does this weird thing with his coat where one sleeve is sort of dangling there and he just sort of uses his arm to hide it in his coat, sort of like Napoleon back in his day. So he's a really cool guy.
Cloud, he was probably the first Final Fantasy character, I think, that had his own dialogue. He wasn't one of those like silent heroes. He had sort of a more masculine soldier persona.
Cloud is probably everyone's favorite Final Fantasy character. I mean, he defined the spiky blonde-haired character with the giant sword, and you know, I think a lot of people are waiting for him to come back in Final Fantasy.
I had a feeling you guys were going to put Cloud on top. I mean, the guy was pretty cute with that spiky hair and huge sword. And of course, every hero needs a hottie. But which heroine will become queen? Can Yuna summon a victory? Or will Lulu's endowments win big? Be vigilant and all will be revealed.
Lulu is pretty hot. Her personality is kind of interesting because, like, female version of Auron kind of thing, you know? I think she's one of the best characters in Final Fantasy series.
I like Lulu from 10, but she got married and pregnant in 10 too, which, you know, that you know, kind of docks points right there.
Yuna from 10 is one of the most popular modern Final Fantasy characters, to the point where she ended up being spun off into her own RPG. You know, she's a very serious girl. She never really opens up her emotions. But as the game begins, you can see her gradually opening up and becoming, you know, you can sort of see the womanliness in her inside grow out as her love for the main character grows.
Riku's there, I think, mainly for, like, I don't know, for people who are into, I don't know, video game females, I guess, because she's basically pretty scantily dressed, like, in both 10 and 10-2. So I guess that's why people like her. And she's kind of like airheady.
Tifa from 7 is sort of a landmark for the series in more ways than one, because she was the first female lead character in the series, but at the same time she was also one of the more complicated characters in the Final Fantasy history, because she starts out with the basic motive of revenge, but then eventually settles down and forms a family of her own and lets other characters take over for her.
I think the reason why Aerith's so popular is because she dies in Final Fantasy VII. And like a lot of people, they get distraught at that moment in the game.
You get kind of like just devastated, you know, like, oh man, I can't believe that, you know, they did that.
Obviously, you're in a fantasy world. You're like, oh, she's gonna come back to life, right? It's gotta happen, but it just never happens.
I've never seen more people care about a female character who died in a video game than Aerith.
I have what it takes to be a Final Fantasy heroine. I mean, I could see myself vanquishing the forces of evil, saving the world, and still getting home in time to change the cat litter. Or maybe I'll recover from my delusions of grandeur by the time we get back from the break. Because when we return, we'll see who you guys summoned forth to help you fight the good fight against some of the meanest boss baddies to ever creep their way into a Final Fantasy game. You're not going to want to miss this.